Word responsive.
You gonna sit, you gonna stand, you gonna be both, or?
I can stand the whole time once I get my knees locked. Whatever you guys want.
I think it's sitting good.
You think sitting is better?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, it's up to you.
Oh, that is nice. Well, it's like every chair on earth that has a lever. They don't actually connect to anything. There are two task chairs in North America in hotel rooms that work. One is in Orlando, and one is in Boston. It's like they just screw those things in there, but they don't actually do anything.
Yeah, I know.
Or you think they do, and you sit down and it goes. You just get shorter.
There's nothing worse than when you're at a meeting and you do that. And you go plop all the way down, and everybody's sitting looking at you, and you're away.
Tried typing like that, but I'm no good
and
at it.
You don't want to kind of stand up and,
Oh yeah.
The chair.
This will be like Goldilocks. This one's too high. This one's too low.
And they can adjust.
This one's covered with cat hair. Get a cat hair. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh.
That one.
Oh, this is going.
Now you just remember when you jump down, okay?
Yeah. Well,
you're up high.
Yeah, my mother at one point said we should have given you ballet lessons as a child. You would have been a more graceful adult. Yeah, I'd have been in a body cast. Oh yeah, I think that's great.
I'm guessing traffic must be bad. We said 6:45, 6:30 for networking, 6:45.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can talk really fast.
Hold it on there. All right. Maybe I'll just unplug it.
6:45. You asked. What can I say?
Just step carefully.
What can I
It's a
say?
very precarious setup.
What's that? Well, yeah. I know. Yeah, well, I might do that, yeah.
I'll just talk really fast.
Yeah. Just don't ask any questions.
No, we're not going to do that.
I'm only kidding.
Okay. I'll go ahead and
another couple of minutes, and then we can just start. And if people are late, guess what? Then that's it. That's the way the cookie crumbles, as they say.
How's that for a splash screen?
What is yours? Did it say CC already on it, or did yours?
Well, this is I'm from the future.
Oh, right. Okay, I'm like, I opened up mine today and I never noticed. Does it say that? Or
No, it doesn't yet.
Oh, okay.
No, and I was writing all this stuff, and they didn't tell us until like the last day. My last markup said CC. I'm like, okay, now I know. Although Illustrator didn't get much of it. Surely they're going to rework that. I mean, that's kind of dull. Digital Publishing Suite, which implies that it's another whole bunch of software, but it really isn't. It's two plugins. In which version of InDesign do you have? You have it then. Well, you have what it takes to build it, and then there's that other half where you deal with Apple. No, if you bought CS6 in a box, you have it. It's not a stupid question because when they called it Suite, everybody thought, oh crap, I've got to buy another whole thing. So they should have called it like Digital Publishing Tools or something like that. But that's why I'm not in marketing. You bet.
There you go, man.
Yeah, I'm back. There's no power.
Oh, there isn't? Okay.
Oh, look, there's more
You're
folks.
going to capture her, and then you got something with the screen, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we're going to go ahead and start, and if anybody comes in, then they can kind of catch up. Has everybody got a drawing ticket for this evening?
No.
Okay, I'll give you one in a second. This evening we're having a drawing for a year subscription to the Creative Cloud. So that's kind of good. I get to do this twice a year, so I kind of like doing this. This is a nice part. So if you win, just come up to me. I'll take your email address. We'll do the drawing after Claudia's done her presentation. We have a Twitter account, AUG ATL. We have a Facebook page, Adobe User Group of Atlanta, and we have a Google Plus page, Adobe User Group of Atlanta too. I try to post updates there when I can of different things that might interest people, different things that Adobe push out, tutorials, new services, just to try and sort of keep everybody a little bit up to date with what's going on. So please go to either Twitter or Facebook and Google Plus and sign up. This evening we're lucky enough to have Claudia McHugh.
I haven't done anything yet, but thank you.
Yes, and she was originally going to talk to us about digital publishing to iPad, but luckily enough she got the go-ahead from Adobe, and she's going to be able to present to us on some of the new updates to the Adobe Cloud that aren't coming out for a couple of weeks. So we're getting a preview this evening of some little goodies that are coming along for us all. Okay. So here's your ticket.
Thank you.
And over to Claudia.
Alrighty. So we're going to do about 50-50 here. Somebody asked me a really good question. She did a minute ago. So bless you. So what is the digital publishing suite? I think it's sort of unfortunate that they called it suite, because we had, Design Suite Standard, Design Suite Premium, Web Premium. Is this another whole box of software? No, frankly, as far as we're concerned, it's two little plugins that ship with InDesign CS5.5 and CS6. You can download them for CS5. That's as far as building, designing, adding interactivity. It's sort of broken into two parts. It's what you do in InDesign, and then you have to get it out to the masses. That's where the real fun begins. That's fun in air quotes, okay? And it's a lot easier now than it was when it first started. It's when you start to get into the Apple part of it that it starts to become a challenge. So, a little quick overview. And I would encourage you to ask questions. If we get a little bogged down, I might ask you to defer them to the end. I have business cards up here, and we passed some around, but there are more folks than there were at that point. I also have cards that give you a little URL for 7 days of lynda.com. So you could take vacation, and that's what I would do with my vacation, certainly. By the way, the last update to Acrobat, anytime it finds the word signature or something it thinks is a signature field, it gives you this festive green bar across the top and says signature fields detected. If you see that and it freaks you out, cuss at the screen and then click on this, and that shuts it up. So it's part of the enduring charm that is Acrobat. So how many of you have InDesign CS6? So how many of you have 5.5? How many of you have 5? How many of you have an older version? Okay. Or you are afraid to raise your hand. Okay. So I'm going to concentrate on the single edition, and here's why. You don't even have to read that to go, God, that's something I don't want to get into. For big publishers like Wired Magazine and Martha Stewart Living, the first part of it is the same. It's all InDesign, which we all know and love, right? So you create layouts. In the olden days, 2 years ago, we had to build a vertical and a horizontal. We don't have to do that anymore because of alternate layouts, and I'm going to show you that. You can do it all in one if you want. You don't have to have vertical and horizontal if you don't want. Frankly, it's twice the work, let's face it. But the short story is you use InDesign, you create your layouts, and you build them to the size of an iPad screen, so 1024 by 768. You add interactivity using something called the folio overlays. The name has changed slightly. And then you combine them together. Let's say that you have 5 articles that you want to put into what's called a folio. Think of a folio like a magazine. You can think of a folio like a little empty back cover, front cover. And then you put your stories in there. It could be one article. The whole publication could be just one InDesign file. It could be multiple InDesign files that you combine together in a folio. But you add your interactivity, and then the folio is it's where you really start knitting things together. And it's at that point, when you finish knitting them together, that then it goes kind of off the back of your computer and starts to be handled by some online processes. I will tell you, when I first started learning this, it was, okay, I'll just do what it says, but I'm not sure why. There is sort of a fog clearing process that takes place, okay? It does get better. And like I said, if you're thinking about doing this, you're picking a good time because a lot of stuff is settled out. But again, this first story is about what's involved for a big publisher. And it uses something called a professional or perhaps the enterprise services, and that's where it's a handoff from your computer to some scarier things. So the folio, I say scarier, because once you get in it, it's not really scary. But there are things that we thought, oh, this is great. I can build something and I can put it on the iTunes store. This will be great. And then we saw things like this and said, well, I'm not going to be doing that. But there's a happy ending to this, and that's the single edition. So I thought I would scare you with this first, and then we talk about something that actual normal human beings can do. But this is what publishers have to go through. But the reason is that there has to be support for subscriptions. So they already have a base of subscribers that are getting print magazines, like less and less, sadly, as time goes by. And they needed to be able to access that subscription base in case they wanted to take advantage and now have a digital subscription. So there's that huge engine, that databases, and being able to do fulfillment and so forth. So that's beyond us mere mortals. And there's also an analytics component to this. And this is one of the appeals, frankly, for a publisher. If they create an app, and it goes in the iTunes store, an app for a publisher is really a viewer. So let's say, and I'm going to show you the Martha Stewart Living app. That's something you give away for free, and then people go through that as sort of a portal and subscribe. So they could subscribe to a year through that. And so every month they get a little notification on their iPad, hey, your new issue is there. And one of the things that this provides that we never had with printed magazines is the ability to analyze when somebody clicks on an ad. When they click on a URL in an ad on their iPad, it knows that they've actually exercised that. So it's, you pass around a magazine, you don't know how many people have seen it. On the iPad, a publisher can tell an advertiser, look, this thing was clicked this many times. This ad that you did last month got more response than what you did this month. Ads that have video components are getting more response. Ads that have URLs in them get more response. Ads with a little bit of animation get more response. So there's feedback that they never had before, and that's a huge appeal for advertisers. But for us, it was like, well, there's no way we'll ever be able to do this. But when the single edition was announced, and this was, I guess, about a year and a half ago, then this became something that normal people could do. So there's a little asterisk at the end of this. It's cheaper if you're a cloud subscriber, but for the beginning of the conversation, we'll leave that out. It's still, up front, the same thing. You're using InDesign. You're building in interactivity. You can test it. You can preview it on your desktop. You can preview it on your iPad. I have my iPad hooked up, and when I crank up the little free viewer, I can be building something here, and I can look at it on the iPad and test it and make sure that it works all right. There's a little emulator on the computer that I can use, and it's pretty darn good, but if you really want to test it, you should look at it on the iPad. Now, how many of you are PC users? Okay. Let's not play Burn the Witch, okay? I myself am bilingual, okay? There's one little thing you need to know. You could build all your interactivity. You can preview it in a little emulator on a PC. But that last step, if you really go all the way through with it and you want to build an app and you want to put it on the iTunes store, you have to use this utility, the app builder. It's Mac OS only. So you have to have a friend with a Mac, or if this is the excuse you've been waiting for, now you get to buy one. Okay? So if you build an app using the single edition, it's a self-contained content and viewer, all in one thing. Something that you build with single edition cannot support subscriptions. So if you want to build a magazine that supports subscriptions, you're going to have to subscribe to either a Pro or Enterprise version, which takes you back to this scary screen. And there is a monthly fee. You can do, I think it's $4.95 a month, and then you buy a bundle of 3,000 folio downloads for $30 a piece. So about $3,000. So it's not cheap. But part of that is because there's this huge engine underneath. But if you use the single edition, you can build an app and combination viewer and content. You think of it like a book if you want. Put that on the iTunes store and sell it. Apple will take 30%. If it's free, they can't take 30% of that, so put up something there that's free if you want. One thing you do have to do, though, you have to have an Apple developer membership. Don't let the D word scare you. You don't have to write any code. It's really a membership thing. And that's for you to get some certificates that you have to use to sign your little app so that you can test it. And once you like it, so that you can deploy it, so you can get it on the iTunes store. There's a lot of documentation on the Adobe website. I'm kind of throwing this stuff out at you. And some of you are going, I think it makes sense now, but it won't by tomorrow morning. But I can give you these slides if you want, and you're going to find, as I say, there are a lot of good resources on the Adobe website. But the thing I want you to concentrate on, unless you work for a publisher, I want you to know that this is doable. This part is doable. And how many of you are cloud subscribers? Okay, I have some good news for you. And it's not that I have bad news for the rest of you, but once you've gone through this, and you've tested it, you've gotten your Apple developer certificates, and you've signed it, and it's all ready to go, and you're ready to put it on the iTunes store. When you use App Builder, your last order of business to really nail this thing shut and create something that you can submit to Apple, either you pay Adobe $395 for a serial number for that app, or if you're a cloud subscriber, you don't pay them zip. So that's one of the nice things about being a cloud subscriber. You can build as many single edition apps as you want. That's part of the deal. You still have to do the $99 to Apple, and you still have to wade through their bureaucracy. I mean, you have to go through the fun that you go through dealing with them, but it can be done. So this is part of the, as I say, part of one of the things that they threw in to sort of sweeten the pot to make people want to subscribe to the cloud. So, when you start looking at the cloud solutions, it's more than just, oh, look, boatload of apps. It's stuff like this, services like this that are really kind of appealing. So, pardon me? Behance is free as well. So, and again, some of this is sadly wasted on me because I'm not a designer. I'm an old pre-press mechanic. So, I like things that are sort of mechanical, so I can make this stuff work. But you show me a blank screen and I will bust out crying. So, you sketch something and say, do this and make it nice and neat and make it print, by gosh, I can do it. I did that in Illustrator. Yeah, you've seen worse. Come on, face it. I like to think I know ugly when I see it, but I have been proven wrong about that. Really, that won an award. But as I say, there are some wonderful resources on the Adobe website. In the iTunes store, if you do a search for DPS tips, Bob Bringhurst, who is one of my heroes, updates this thing constantly, and it's an app with a bunch of little publications within it that show you how to build this stuff, from basics up to really interesting interactivity. And very readable. Normal human beings can understand it, and he keeps it updated. He's the guy who has kept up the InDesign user guide all these years. Great guy. The forums on the Adobe website, period, are a fabulous resource. Forums.adobe.com. When something blows up in my face, that's the first place I go. A very, very active digital publishing suite forum. So really good resource. The thing that was the toughest for us trying to use the single edition, as I said, the scary bureaucracy when you deal with Apple. It all makes sense when you're dealing with InDesign because it works the way you expect InDesign to work. It works the way you expect Adobe products to work. Once you stepped out that back door and off that dock and into that developer world, it was an exercise in character building. But there's a guide from Adobe called the Step-by-Step Guide, which will hold your hand through all of that. It is a fabulous life-saving thing. So, and they've just recently updated it because Apple just changed the way things work. But the guys who wrote that have updated it. So, like I say, if you're thinking about taking this on, you're picking a really good time where a lot of the road has been paved, and it's just nowhere near as scary as it used to be. So, for those of us who want to do this on our own, the single edition, why show you slides when I could show you stuff that you can actually do? Now, I'm going to do this in CS6 because we don't have the full complement of the DPS stuff ready for CC yet, because after all, I am here from the future, right? So here's a document, and this has been around for a while. I have really sort of whaled this thing. This is just a horizontal version, and let me wake this up so you know where it comes from. Remember I said these little components are built right in under Window, Folio Overlays. That's how you add the interactivity. Once you're through knitting all that together, then you embark on the Folio Builder. Well, let's look at the Folio Overlays. So this little guy wakes up, and first thing this is the finished version, so I'll show you how it looks, and then I'll show you how these little components get added. This is CS6 right now. I'm going to show you CC, but because we don't have these components in CC yet. So when I hit preview down here, and this little guy is a little jumpy. Come on, say hello. Everybody's looking. Preview on desktop. So what it does is it cranks up a little emulator that looks like an iPad. And it'll take a little while because it has to sort of digest it. And because we're all looking at it and it has a progress bar, it'll take even longer than usual. So just act like you don't care. So you get the flocked ceiling, and then somebody's still looking at it. This would not be a good time for you to crap out on me. Hello? Yoo-hoo!
Because you did that update?
No. It's, apparently the clean living is not paying off. Okay, come on. Hand me that Sister Mary Claudia card. I may need the nun for this. I bought a little die cutting machine, and so I made these little cards with Sister Mary Claudia to show to the computer to try to intimidate it. Don't make me come over there. Oh, you're going to be a twitch about it, are you? All right. That's funny because it's never done that before. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Pardon? Oh, it's not interneting at all. It's all local. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Luckily, I went to Catholic school, and so public humiliation doesn't really bother me. Go ahead and whack me. So this gives me an excellent opportunity to show you how you can test this on your iPad. See if that works. So this little app right here, the Adobe Content Viewer, is free. You can get that on the iTunes Store. What you do is you crank that up, and then, assuming it recognizes it, it should say preview on my iPad. Oh yes, there's hope. So you can see it pulsing down the cable there. So it has to be connected. There's no way to do this wirelessly, at least yet. That would be kind of fun, but... And I'm using Reflector, which is a great way to show the iPad on here, so that you can see it up there. Yeah, it's going real well. Come on. There we go. It's either that or we have to all leave, right? This is so convincing that I find myself going mush, mush on the screen, but that doesn't work. So there's nothing exciting on the first 2 pages, but as we go along, there's this. Now, it's just kind of blanket statement about interactive stuff, even things like interactive PDFs. It helps if you inform the viewer. Otherwise, they go, so. Now, a 4-year-old will go, click on that. But we're adults here, so we need some sort of guidance, like something that says swipe to view 360 degrees. So when you swipe, it swirls around. And if anyone is prone to motion sickness, I will tell you when this is over. So as you go through certain little spots, there are little flags that show up. Is that kind of cute?
Yeah.
So here's kind of a blanket statement about designing stuff for a tablet. You don't have very much screen real estate. You could have lots of pictures, but they have to be very, very tiny. Or you can have a lot of pictures occupy a single part of the screen. And that's what's going on here. You see multiple views. This is not a QuickTime VR. You'll see when I show you how this is built, it's actually a folder full of still images. So the mechanics of it are actually pretty simple. Here's a video. I'm going to click on it. It will play. And we can't hear it, but trust me, I wish this were a real series. I would have watched it, but it's not. So when you tap on it, you get the little controls. You can pause it. It's an MP4 file. So audio content has to be MP3. Video has to be MP4. You know, Flash is evil, right? E-E-V-Y-I-L. Evil. Here, another little hint. Tap to play. So when I tap, I get a vegetable medley. So again, it's nice big pictures, but they're swapping out all within one space. It's maximizing that space. There's such a thing perhaps as being a little too subtle with your instruction that says look a little closer, so you do. But what that really means is this is, if I tap on it, it wakes it up. It's a pan and zoom. So I can zoom in and I can scroll around. And then this little guy over here says take a look around. It's actually a panorama. Now that's a little trickier to build. You have to have special lenses and software to knit it together. And again, not good for people with motion sickness, especially if you do this. But think about this, real estate ads, things like that, building tours. It's really maximizing what little screen real estate you have. Now this one is trying to give you information about fictional parts of this town. So these little areas, it turns out, are little buttons that trigger this content over here to change. So as I click, you'll see the picture and the text swap out. And notice the little, see the little push pin here? This little guy right here. Notice that when it's active, its little center turns white. Now there's that and that. So visual feedback is a nice thing. When somebody clicks on something, it's nice if it changes appearance. That way they know they have a right to expect something to happen. So what do you think? Kind of cute? And surprisingly easy to build. So let's see how this is built. So let's put you away. So I'm going to start with an earlier version of this. I've stunned you into silence there. So this, I kind of think of the folio overlays panel almost like a little menu card. You pick what you want and you'll notice it kind of flips over and says, okay, well here are the options for that thing that you chose. So when I have this selected, it says, well, it could be a hyperlink, could be a slideshow, it could be, well, I want an image sequence. So when I choose that, it flips over and it says, I just need to know the folder where all these images are. And how does it know what order to display them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, E. It's just going by the name of the file. So all I have to do is point it to that folder, which is right here. And you can see the names, Final Spin 01, 02, 03. And actually, you can sort of reverse engineer a video and pull these out as single frames if you want. It says, well, do you want to see something in place there? You could put another image there, you could put a word there, or you can have it show the first image. You could set it to autoplay, but the minute somebody comes in there, it'll start spinning and they'll throw up. So that's kind of cruel. And in this case, it says, well, image sequence, most of the time what people want is to swipe to change it. So that's the default. And I could test it here. I'm not going to take the time. Trust me, it's going to work. But I could test, well, if my preview would work. And then the video. So there's some vestiges of some interesting stuff that they gave us in CS5. They gave us the ability to put in animation. We could animate text. We could have flying text. Tragically, it exports as SWIFT, and so you can't have it on the iPad. But a lot of the controls that they gave us in CS5 carry through, and so you kind of have to invoke them for some of this stuff. So here, when you go to bring in a video, it's the same thing that you do when you go to bring in an image. It's just file place, and then you have to find it, and that would be right there. There's my MP4, and as you can imagine, that's going to fluff up the file size. You can have it stream, but I'm just going to make it be self-contained. So it's going to increase my download size, but then once they have it, they can watch it on the plane. Yeah, you would put a URL. And then, of course, if they had no access to it, then I guess you'd put something up that says, sorry. But that's, I mean, as far as file size, it's some of the same considerations we have when we build interactive PDFs. You know, it's going to add to the file size, but you learn to live with it. And notice, when I chose that, the little folio overlays flipped over like, you have a video. Yes, but we want to do one more thing. So I'm going to go to Window, Interactive, and Media, and I can choose something to represent that. I could bring in another image, so I could have artwork that has the universal, circle and triangle thing, or I could have a still from the movie, which is kind of nice. And I can actually, well, this is get you in trouble at work, you could actually play the movie right here in InDesign. But I'm just going to scroll through until I find, that'll probably work. And I'm just going to say that for my poster, I'm going to use the current frame. So your other options are none. There's nothing there. And so they don't see anything until either they trigger it with a button or they accidentally click on it. The standard is a nice gesture, but I don't think anybody's ever used it. And then the current frame, which is, I think, the most useful. But do keep that in mind, the option to choose an image, because you could have a high-res image in there if you wanted. But current frame, I believe that'll do the job. And then the folio overlays panel has flipped over. I do have the option to have it play full screen or autoplay. The default is to tap to view controllers, meaning that you tap it and it'll play. You tap again if you want to see the controller, so it doesn't ugly up the play.
Full screen with the standard controls that comes up.
You know what? We could try that and see if it'll probably make it catch fire. What the heck? Shall we? Let's. I'm game. I love a good science project. How do we get this big burn spot in the floor? I don't know. What I'm about to make is probably one of the most useful components in digital publishing. And it's something called a multi-state object. The hipsters who do this a lot call them MSOs, multi-state objects. And it's sort of like a flip. You remember when you used to, well, you wouldn't, draw on the edges of a book and get flip and get animation? Sort of like that. But you can choose, you can pile these up and then trigger their appearance. So this is another way to have, multiple images or multiple graphics in one area. I'm just going to select them all, and then I'm just going to align them. And then the folio overlay says, I wonder what you want to do with that. I have to do something else to it, and this again is a little vestige of CS5. Under Window, Interactive, Object States. And because I have all of those frames selected, it says, well, if you click the New button, that will knit these all together as one multi-state object. And you can address each state individually. So I'll just click it, and if you were going to have more than one of these in a page, it would behoove you to name it something you'd remember, but I'm just going to call it Veggies. And there might come a time where you want to have nothing show up at first, but you want to trigger the appearance of this later on. You can make one of the states just be an empty frame and have that be the state that's active. And then you can have a button that maybe rolls through the multiple states. Or you could have multiple buttons, little bitty triggers to have the remaining states show up. But it's just, again, it's one of the more powerful tools. You can do tons of stuff with MSOs. But in this case, since I've already turned it into an MSO, the folio overlays panel says, I bet you want to make a slideshow. Yes, I do. And so I can set up a crossfade. I can swipe to change the image. Or in this case, I'm going to say tap to play or pause. And then the interval, 2 seconds can be a long time when you're looking at vegetables, especially during a demo. So we'll make that 1 sec. That may get a little frenetic. But and then there's this, hide before playing. So it gives you a lot of options, starting with something really simple, pile of frames, right? Does this start to give you some ideas? Because I can, I want to see little wheels sort of going over your head. And then with this image, if I double click, you can see the limits of the image. Well, you know what? While I have you here, I've turned this off, but I should probably turn it back on. How many of you hate the content grabber? Yes. How many of you love the content grabber? Okay. I was going to, okay, shut your eyes for this part. It's great. The idea was to try to help new users of InDesign grab a picture, move it, scale it, whatever, instead of having to go white arrow, black arrow. Problem is, in little bitty frames, you go to move the little bitty frame and you shoot the picture right out of the frame and you wonder where it is, and it's like on the next guy's screen. If you want to turn this off, all you have to do is View, Extras, Hide Content Grabber, but you still have a really good way to toggle between talking to the whole shebang and talking to the image. If you double-click, you're talking to the image. You double-click again, you're back to whole shebang mode, which, for my money, is how it should have always been. I just thought as an act of mercy, I would tell you that while I was here. So while I have that selected, it says, well, what would you like to do with that? Because there's any number of things that could happen to this frame. So the folio overlays panel is like, I'm afraid to guess. And what I want to do is create a pan and zoom. Now you can imagine that's complex. You want to zoom in, you want to pan around, there'd be a lot of controls. When you choose pan and zoom, the folio overlays panel flips over and says off or on. So I believe spider monkeys can probably do that. And then this one, a little bit special. Remember I said for a panorama, you have to have special lenses and special or at least special software. Although I guess there are little guys that you can actually do with an iPhone these days. You kids, I swear. With this one, I tell it that I want to have that because really what you're doing is you're populating hot spots. I say I want it to be a panorama, and very much like the image sequence, it says, well, tell me the folder where these are. So I point it to that, and it would be here. And this again happens by numbers. There's a digital publishing suite guide that tells you how to do a lot of this stuff, and there's actually a little diagram that shows you how you should name them for who's the top, who's the bottom, who's the front face. It's sort of the mime cube approach, really. But all you do is point it to the folder, and it knows what to do with them. So the hard part is shooting it. Now these little guys, here's what's going on here. It's a trigger and target thing. These little guys on the right are buttons. So each one of these is a button which triggers the appearance of a state of a multi-state object. Remember the veggies? So multi-state objects make sense here. I'm going to option drag this out here just so I have something I can kind of take apart. When I go into Window Interactive and Object States, you can see the individual states, and then I could take this thing apart. I could say that I want to release all the states to objects. And of course you get the yellow triangle of terror here, and it says, it's not going to work anymore. That's why I duplicated it. So each state is a group consisting of a graphic and a text frame. That's all it is. So that's each state of the group gives you information and a picture. So it's already been made into an MSO. See how hip I am. And then here are the triggers, and most of them have already been set up. But this top little guy, he's a button already, but he doesn't have a job yet. By the way, just while I have you here, do any of you build interactive forms in Acrobat? I think that's fun. That's sick and twisted, isn't it? You can build them in InDesign. You can't do JavaScript, you can't do calculations, but you can build forms, and there's a lot of stuff it does better. Like, you can change the species of a field in InDesign, which you can't do in Acrobat. Don't get me started. But you didn't have to. I started it myself. So any frame can become a button. So I could take this little frame here, and I could say, poof, you're a button. And I can give it 3 different appearances. Now, it's set up so that it could pay off in a PDF, could pay off in a SWIFT. Sadly, we can't really use those. Or it could pay off in DPS. So normal rollover and click. Rollover means nothing on an iPad because you know there's not like 2 inches above the surface. That's probably coming. So only click would count. But you could actually have a different appearance on click. So you could have it look different when it's active. And that's part of that visual feedback. And then you can give it a name. And then you can say, you can assign an action. And the list of actions is divided up according to what reality it will work in. The top part will work whether you're going for SWIFT, PDF, or DPS. I'm now speaking totally in the acronyms. The SWIFT stuff is in this section, and then the interactive PDF down here. But as long as you stay north of this area, you've got something that will work in DPS. By the way, there's also a little library of sample buttons and forms. So there's some rather festive little guys in here, some of which look suspiciously like pharmaceuticals. I suspect that setting up the interactivity was a challenge. Anyway. But that's the idea. Anything can become a button. But they've already set these up. I just wanted you to know that they're very easy to create. And they already have this little shape here as a button, and they have given it an appearance for it when it's clicked, so that you know that it's triggered. But it doesn't have a job. So on release, it's going to go to a particular state, and it says Well, there's only one MSO on the page. You can't miss. It's an MSO called If You Go, and the state just happens to be the first one in the list, the green light district, which I guess is the opposite of the red light district. But there you go. Trigger and target. That's all it is. A button, you click on it, it makes a state of a multi-state object show up. So think how you could pack a whole bunch of fun into that little bitty screen with MSOs. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, maybe I'm really ignorant. I'm on a PC. I'm not going to go out to an iPad, but these things are really cool. I'm a web developer.
Okay.
We're coming out from the PC world. How does this relate to an HTML page or JavaScript or anything else? Can I utilize the cool things you just taught me how to do in design?
A lot of it you can, and because you can, well, I say you can export to Swift, which, is a mixed blessing. As long as you're creating something for a device that supports Flash, yippee. There are also converters. I guess Flash Professional will actually convert Flash Swift content to HTML5. There's a deconstruction process that has to take place. But yeah, it can pay off.
Do you know if Adobe has any thoughts of building export out to HTML5?
Your lips to God's ears. Well, it's funny you should mention it, because InDesign is becoming more and more of an engine for EPUB, and EPUB under the hood is HTML and CSS, and there we go with the acronyms again. So we know that there kind of is a pathway there. Whether they will exploit that and let us squirt out web pages, I don't know. But when you go to File, Export, there's the Swift, there's XML, that's not much fun, but EPUB.
Seems like they're cutting out a huge part of the market by
Well,
focusing only on the Apple end of it, especially with Google taking off as it is.
Well, the thing is that you can build for Android. You can build for Android devices. The single edition won't, though. In order to build something and be able to send it to an Android device, you have to subscribe to either the Pro or the Enterprise solution, which is prohibitive. Yep, afraid so. I hope so, because
From my mouth to your mouth, take it back to Adobe and tell
Oh, they
them
know
there's
it.
a bigger market out there.
They know that. And now it may be that they don't have unlimited resources. They have to concentrate on what's important. And I will tell you, InDesign CC, when you launch it, you may go, well, gosh, we got a lot of fun stuff in Photoshop and in Illustrator. Where's all the fun stuff in InDesign? We got some cool stuff, but they spent a ton of time making it 64-bit native, increasing the performance, and improving the EPUB export. So they had a lot. It's like, well, we had to fix the transmission in the engine this time around. So going forward, I think we may see more. But it really has become a powerful engine for EPUB, and that gives us some hope. But then again, you have to look at it from Adobe's standpoint. They don't want to cannibalize Dreamweaver and the Edge products. So I don't know. And I'm not a web developer person, but when I saw that you could animate text in InDesign, I'm like, yay, I still don't have to learn Flash. So I wrote a whole book about it. And about the afternoon it went to press, Steve Jobs said, no, you're never going to have Flash on the iPad. And it sank like a rock. But oh well, that's the way it goes. But it's, we can keep our fingers crossed and hope for the future. I think, this is an upheaval that's, I would say, is of the same magnitude as when desktop publishing happened. People were given tools, they had no idea how to use them,
I'll give you a quick story. When Acrobat was created, I met with product managers, and they told me they were going to sell the readers product, and I said, you're absolutely crazy. Do not do that. It won't happen. They tried.
And nobody bought it.
And guess what? The reader is now free.
Yes.
So, Adobe leaving pretty early this time.
Okay, well, call Mr. Adobe again.
Months of marketing expense.
Yeah, and who knows whether, as I say, is it an architectural limitation? Is it a marketing thing? God, who knows? Yeah, Acrobat's an interesting story because all it was ever meant to be was like a digital carbon copy, and boy, did it grow like Topsy. And I know in the graphic arts, it's, we live and die by it. So, a couple of things. If And let me switch back to reflector. Again, I keep trying to click on that. It's not real. Don't click on it. Wired Magazine, I guess, was the first publication to really capitalize on this. It was the first one I remember seeing. But Martha Stewart Living, this first issue really showed what you could do. She said, "Hello, Martha." Martha's out in the garden. She'll be up in a minute.
She's in jail.
No, she's not in jail. She got railroaded. All right, so this was the first. How's that for a cover? That's pretty, isn't it? It gets prettier. Watch this. As we say here in the South, hey, y'all, watch this. It usually involves jumping off the roof and thinking you can fly, but... And then when you rotate it, and you can play it again, now that's a magazine cover.
And that's why nobody's buying print.
Sadly, yeah, and as an old print wonk, it's like, wow, oh, crap. So I'm not going to go all the way through this, but I mean, it's a beautiful reading experience because it glows at you. I can remember when they first announced the iPad, it's like, I'm not going to sit and watch movies. I don't have time for that. I don't need one of these. And then I had to write about DPS and kind of had to have one and went, oh, I see what you mean. So this was, in the olden days, they had to build two versions of this. They were two separate InDesign docs, well, more than two probably. But they did a gorgeous job of it. And you talk about bringing something to life. And this is what this is meant for. But long about the third version of this, third issue of this, it no longer rotated. Because I can imagine that they came up to her house with pitchforks and said, it's bad enough we have to do a vertical one. You're killing us over here. And it turns out that people don't demand that. So, you really don't have to, oh, look, it's going off again. Okay. It is hypnotic. But what if you did want to do vertical and horizontal? Well, then how do you do it if you don't want to build two versions? We can only go to 8, huh? I'm going to talk really fast. I'm going to have to quit reflector here. Just quit that. Okay. So this next little bit I'm going to show you liquid layout features, liquid layout and alternate layout. I'm just going to do a little quickie about this. If you're building for a tablet device, it's absolutely indispensable if you're going to do vertical and horizontal. But if all you're ever going to do is print, if you have to do multiple sizes, maybe you have to do letter and then A4. Or if you built 8.5 by 11 and they change presses and now it needs to be 8 3/8 by 10 7/8. Oh man, if I had had this, it would have been a lifesaver. But let me find my. We do the scenic tour of the hard drive here. Here we go. So I'm going to show you a finished bit that has liquid layout rules applied to it, and then I'll show you how this stuff happens. In CS5, they gave us the ability to have multiple page sizes in a document, and that's what the page tool could do. It could click on a page, and then you could specify different dimensions. It has more jobs starting in CS6. You notice these little brackets here? It lets me temporarily test what would happen to the page content if I change the dimensions. It's going to respond the way it does because there are already rules in place. Oh, look, it's elastic, it's alive. On this, and it's something that you apply spread by spread. Notice that I might have fewer or more columns. Is that kind of fascinating?
Awesome.
Thank you. I think so. And now this one, see these dashed guides? These are not plain old guides. These are liquid layout guides. And I'm showing you the finished business, and then I'll show you how they operate. Same thing happening with that text frame. Past a certain point, it starts to grow more columns. You squish it in, it makes fewer. It will change height vertically and horizontally. The frame that she's in will change height, will change width, but won't change height. But her image changes with it. It's funny you should mention that. That you'd have to deal with. But I had a student in a class once say, where does overset text go? And the lady next to her said, it goes to alphabet heaven. I defy you to prove otherwise. She was the same woman who says, where's the clipboard? And I said, nobody knows. Anyway, so how's this happening? Well, I'll start with just a little cheesy document and show you real quick, and then I know you want to see some new stuff. Where is it? It's on the desktop. I used to never put stuff on the desktop, and then I got old and said, eh. And then I bought a utility that hides your desktop. That's the way to go. So, under Window, Interactive, and Liquid Layout, and this is something that is in CS6 and later, you have these options. Off, doesn't do anything. Scale and recenter, for the most part, not going to help you a whole lot. The two most promising ones are object-based and guide-based. So we're going to take a look at guide-based, and then we'll take a look at object-based. The way guide-based options work, you use the page tool. So it makes a special kind of guide. You just take the page tool, and as I drag in a vertical guideline, as long as it touches, and it doesn't matter where, it has now given both these frames permission to stretch this way. So they seem backwards to me at first, but think of them like pleats. So I have to do something to this graphic to tell it that it's okay to stretch if the frame changes size. And it's already been set to auto-fit. And then I can take this text frame, go to text frame options, and I can use something else that's new in CS6, which is flexible width. So I can say, once it gets past a certain width, you have to pop a new column. So that's kind of cool. And there are also some sizing things that I could impose, but I'm going to skip that. All right, so what do I get so far? Well, if I change the width, there we go. But there's nothing to govern the height. So I got to drag in a horizontal pleat, and it's going to have to touch both of these. All right, so that's going to do that. There's still going to have to be some massaging, but it beats the heck out of starting from scratch. Now this little guy, nobody's told him what to do, so I need to select him and tell him that he gets to auto-fit, which I can do either up here or I can do over here. So it's kind of a permission thing, and he's going to have a couple of guides cross him to say you can change size horizontally, you can change size vertically. So you can see in a complex page, you'd be dragging in a ton of guides. And it doesn't matter if you have 40 guides going across something, they don't cancel each other out. But, still, it beats starting from scratch. So that's the guide-based approach. And then here's the object-based approach, which I think might let you get a little more granular. Again, you do it with a page tool. I'm going to select my big image in the back, if I can get a hold of it. It's already set to auto-fit. And I'm telling this spread that we're going to use object-based. And I'm going to tell it that I want it to resize with the height and the width. Now this is a little subtle. I'm going to undo this. Combination of zooming in here and get totally disoriented. See those little guys that look like little padlocks? I could actually click on them and accomplish this. I find them a little hard to hit sometimes. So if I say that I want to resize height and width, notice that they become little springs. So they're just saying, they're just little visual feedback to tell you what's going on. And then this frame, let's see. See these little, you know what these little guys are now. I could click on them. But I'm going to tell it that I want it, I'm not going to resize it, but I'm going to pin it to the right and the top. So I'm going to keep the relationship. You see how that little guy reached out and hung on? I wish it would turn into little hands, but that's just me. But that's what it's doing. It's grabbing onto the edge. This is going to be the same thing. I'm going to say I want you to pin to the top and the left. See it reach out and grab on. And then this, I'm just going to say, just pin yourself to the bottom and then just kind of float. So what's the result? Now when I resize the page. Now the thing about doing this with the page tool is you don't really change the dimensions. You're just testing. So what do you think? Kind of cool? So if I were doing this for print, and I had built my letter size page and I now needed an A4 page, I could come up to my file and document setup and I could change my dimensions. Or, I really kind of need both, right? So here's what I would do. And again, the inspiration for this is for tablet publishing. I can come to the Pages panel menu and I can say, create an alternate layout. So before I do that, nothing up my sleeve, nothing over here. So when I say create alternate layout, it looks at my liquid layout rules and it says, what do you want me to do? I want you to preserve what I ask it to do. I want you to pay attention to this where it says link stories. Now, this is built to a vertical iPad size, 1024 by 768. And so InDesign says, I bet you want a horizontal iPad. But you can put anything you want in here. So it could be 8.5, A4, postcard, poster, whatever. So I'm just going to say, let it rip. And there's my alternate layout.
Awesome.
How cool is that? So it's like a cooking show. Oh, look, there's the flan. Yeah, well, there was a whole lot of flaunting around before that happened. And there's going to have to be some massaging. But is that cool? It gets cooler. Remember that little check mark about link stories? And I'm going to put these side by side so that you can see what's going on. See? This is a thing we've been able to do for a while. I want to see a new window for this document, and then we'll turn that off. On the left, I will have my original, and there's a parent-child relationship between them. Whoops, sorry. You over here, and you over here. So this is the parent, my vertical original, and this is the child. When I zoom in on this, you might notice that there's a little link icon on my story. That's because there's now a relationship between this story and this parent story, or this story on the parent layout. So if I change the text on this, it's going to say that do I want to update it over here? Was that a sound of happiness, fear? What was that exactly? So I could say whether you're a hiker, and watch the minute I change something, it says, something's happened next door. I'm not like my mama anymore. So all I have to do is is click on that, and it updates itself. Now, those little guys, they couldn't make them any smaller. It'd be kind of tough to spot them if all you're doing is looking for those little yellow guys. But every story now has an entry in the links panel for that reason. So it's a lot easier, frankly, to find them there. But it's a one-way ticket, or it's a one-way sluice, if you will. So if I come into the child layout and I say, well, maybe I say you're a bicyclist. And this one goes, yeah, wait till your father gets home. So here I say runner, and this one goes, I'm not the same anymore. When I go to update the child, because it has a local override, I'm going to get a little alert that says, if you update it to match the mama, you're going to lose that override that you performed here, which I think stands to reason. There you go. And because I still want to show you some other new stuff, I will just say, you can do this within one document, even if you don't build an alternate layout. There's a thing called place and link, and there are these little tools, the content collector and content placer, and you can have them forge links between stories. So let's say you have boilerplate text that's going to go through a 128-page annual report, and you know it's going to change. Instead of doing find change, you could do your one little story frame, and then place a link throughout the document. You change the mama, you update them all, and there you go. And get a load of this, and I'm glad you're sitting down, you can do this across documents. So you could change it in one document and have the other, you wake up another document and it goes, oh, I need to be updated. Does that give you some ideas? Yes. Yes, you can have more than one alternate layout. Wouldn't that get to be fun to housekeep? But yeah, you can. But the first one's always the mama. So there's always that parent-child relationship. So if you had 3 layouts, the third one's not based on the second one. The third one's still based on the first one, which I think.
You do a single page ad with that comes back and says, we don't place it in publications, different channels.
Yes, and that was the first thing I thought. It was if you're doing multiple versions of an ad, because you could have it all in one document, and the housekeeping, your swatches, your fonts, your styles, and you can map your styles from one layout to another. So let's say if heading 1 in one, you want to keep that same text tag, but you want heading 1 to be blue and 14 points in another layout, it actually duplicates your paragraph styles and character styles and object styles and puts them in groups. And so they could have different definitions within the different groups. We could do a whole night on nothing but this, but who cares, huh? So does that sort of pique your interest?
Definitely.
Because I find people reacting that, well, I'm never going to do tablet stuff. Yeah, even though. That's what I said, and look what happened to me. So, let's take a look at Photoshop. Of course, it's all dark but you don't have to do that. You can come in here to your interface, and you can cheer things up if you want to. I think it might make it easier for you to see. There are a number of videos on the Adobe website that will show you some of this stuff too. So let's see. Somewhere on my desktop I have some CC demo assets. Here we go. Oh boy, here we go into the future. I will say that there's been a theme over the years in Photoshop. I myself am a lousy photographer. I'm a very good retoucher. Those things may be related. It's made photographers sloppier, I think. And this one right here is really going to contribute to that, I think. And it's something called camera shake reduction. If you were a professional photographer, I'm pretty sure you'd have it on a tripod. But let's say there's an earthquake. So it's not for motion. So if there was one thing in the image that moved, this is probably not going to be the answer, because in fixing that one thing that moved, you'd mess up everything else. But what it's doing is it's analyzing the image, and it's looking for a uniform displacement, if you will. So if I go up to Filter, Sharpen, and choose Shake Reduction, I let it take a look at it, and you can see that little progress bar. It's actually analyzing the offset. And if you look at before and after, because you can see the smear, right? And then look at the fix. Nothing up my sleeve, really. So when let me see if I can make this little guy a little bit bigger. You'll have to imagine, because it's a little hard to tell with the lights, but there's like a little tail, like a little comet tail off this. So it's analyzing the image, and it somehow, and I think it's alien technology, it understands that sort of common distortion or that common movement that's taken place. Now you can ask it to look at other spots. You can move this around and go, I think maybe you'd do a better job if you were looking at this area, and it'll go, well, okay, I'm game. But I have to say that letting it do what it wants to, it's done a very nice job. You can also build multiple little analysis zones and have them butt heads, and sometimes it improves it. A lot of the time I've found that it really makes things look a little crunchy. I say let it do what it wants to do. And you can also build your own little manual trace. It has beat me every time. So I say let it do what it wants. It's really pretty astounding. But I fear that it's only going to contribute to the public perception that we can take a photo of a license plate from 30,000 feet and track down that guy that, it's not CSI, it's Photoshop. But it's pretty darn cool. So there's that. And there's sort of this theme that your clients ask you, and certainly your family members, make something out of nothing, right? I have this little image that I got off the web, and I want to blow it up to the side of a building.
And make it look nice, yeah.
Bless your heart. You all know what bless your heart means, don't you? It's a southern term that means you idiot. But when you say bless your heart, well, if somebody broke their leg, you say, bless your heart. But if they did it trying to fly off the roof, you go, bless your little heart. It's very subtle. So, sharpening, something that people ask us to do. Now, we're not talking about something that's out of focus, but something that's a little soft. That's gotten pretty amazing. If I go to Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen, let me show you how bad you could do this. If I drag this all the way to the right, I don't know, that doesn't really look all that bad, darn it. But if we look at what that amount would have done in previous versions, a little crunchy, huh? So in other words, you can push it a whole lot farther, and you have to understand what sharpening does is it looks at edge contrast, and it forms a little rim. That's what radius is here. So if you jack up the radius, you're going to see even more pronounced. But here's something we never had before. You can ask it to reduce the noise. So